What if the school bully messed with the wrong girl? A girl with such a powerful connection that it could change everything. This inspiring story follows Maya Williams, a shy new student who becomes the target of Bryce Carter, the most feared guy at school. He thinks she's weak and an easy target, but what he doesn't know is that Maya has a secret that will flip everything upside down in the most unexpected way. Stay until the end, because what starts with a bully's arrogance will end with his total downfall. Maya Williams stepped off the bus holding the straps of her backpack as she looked up at the massive front entrance of Clearview High School in Houston, Texas. The fresh fall air carried the smell of cut grass and warm pavement still hot from summer heat. Students moved in groups, laughter and casual talks filled the space all around her. But Maya felt like she didn't belong. She wasn't new to switching schools. Actually, this was her fourth move in just 3 years. Some kids move because their parents get new jobs. Maya moved because she needed a fresh start again. She kept her head down as she walked toward the main doors, hoping to disappear into the crowd. A few students turned their heads, curious about the new girl, but she looked away. Clearview wasn't anything special, really. Just a big suburban school full mostly of middle-class kids who had known each other since kindergarten. The football team was pretty good, the cheer squad was popular, and the social order had been set long before Maya showed up. None of this mattered to her. She had one goal and one goal only: stay invisible. Inside the hallway was buzzing with energy. Lockers slammed shut, sneakers squeaked across tile floors, and teachers tried to push students into classrooms before the first bell rang. Maya kept walking, looking at her schedule. She was used to this routine, finding her locker, figuring out where to sit at lunch, and most importantly, spotting which kids she should stay away from. That's when she saw Bryce Carter. Tall, broad shoulders, with an easy confidence that only the most popular and untouchable guys in high school have. He was leaning against some lockers surrounded by a group of boys wearing school jackets, all laughing at something he just said. From far away, Maya could see he had an air of control. The kind that made people either follow him or be scared of him. She knew his type. Bryce was the golden boy, the star quarterback, good-looking, from a rich family. But there was something else, too. The way students around him laughed way too hard. The way they got nervous when he spoke. Maya recognized the pattern. She had met guys like Bryce before. The ones who love power and like to intimidate people. She didn't plan on getting his attention, but fate had other ideas. As she walked past, someone bumped into her shoulder hard. It wasn't by accident. Her books fell to the ground and scattered across the hallway. A few students looked and some giggled. She bent down fast, ignoring the burning feeling in her cheeks. Well, what do we have here? Maya froze. She didn't need to look up to know whose voice it was. Bryce Carter. His voice was calm and amused, but there was something sharp about it. Like a lion playing with food. She could hear his friends laughing behind him. Slowly she looked up. Bryce stood over her with his arms crossed, wearing that annoying smirk she had seen before on bullies who knew they owned the school. "I don't think I've seen you before," he said. "You new here?" Maya didn't answer. She just grabbed her books and stood up, pushing past him without saying anything. But Bryce wasn't ready to stop. "Hey, where are your manners?" he called out, his voice going through the hallway. "I asked you a question." Maya kept going. She had played this game before. The best way to handle people like him was to not engage. But Bryce didn't like being ignored. That's when she felt it. A sharp pull on her backpack tugging her back slightly. Not enough to hurt, but enough to show that Bryce wasn't going to let this go. Maya stopped. Slowly she turned around. For a moment the hallway felt quiet. Even the students who weren't paying attention before had started to look. She met Bryce's eyes, and for the first time something flickered in his face. Curiosity, maybe even a little shock. "You shouldn't have done that," Maya said quietly. Bryce raised an eyebrow. Then he laughed, a slow, mocking laugh. "And why is that?" he asked with a smirk. Maya didn't answer. She just held his eyes, not blinking. Bryce tilted his head to the side. "You're kinda weird, you know that?" A few laughs from his friends. Maya turned back and walked away. She didn't need to look back to know that Bryce wasn't finished with her yet. And he had no idea what kind of mistake he was about to make. The rest of the day went by in a blur. Maya sat in the back of class, only talking when she had to, avoiding any eye contact. She ate lunch alone, finding a spot near the edge of the cafeteria where she could watch, but not be watched. Bryce and his friends owned the lunchroom. They took up the biggest table right in the center, talking loud, laughing like they didn't have a care in the world. Every so often Maya would feel his eyes look toward her, but he didn't come over. Not yet. By the end of the day, Maya was happy to finally leave school. The Houston heat was still strong, making the pavement shimmer as she walked to the bus stop. Just as she reached for her phone, she heard a voice behind her. "Hey, new girl." She turned around. Bryce was standing there with his hands in his pockets and a grin still on his face. Behind him, a few of his friends were waiting. Maya sighed. "What do you want?" Bryce took a slow step forward. "You got an attitude problem, you know that?" Maya didn't respond. Bryce's smirk got bigger. "What, you think you're better than me?" Maya let out a short laugh. Not scared, not nervous, just amused. And that more than anything caught Bryce off guard. "I think," she said slowly, "that you should walk away." Bryce's grin slipped for half a second before he recovered. "Oh yeah." He took another step closer, towering over her. "And why is that?" Maya leaned in slightly, her voice barely above a whisper. "Because you have no idea who I am." Bryce chuckled, shaking his head. "And who are you exactly?" Maya didn't answer. Instead, she took a step back, lifted her phone and pushed a single button on her screen. A loud engine roar filled the air. A black Dodge Charger Hellcat pulled up next to the curb. The kind of car that makes people turn their heads. The tinted window rolled down slowly. And there he was, Vin Diesel. Bryce's smirk vanished. Maya turned back to Bryce, smiling for the first time that day. "Still think I'm weird?" she asked. Bryce didn't answer because for the first time in his life he felt small. Maya watched as Bryce's confident smirk disappeared. His jaw tightened. His eyes flickered between her and the unmistakable figure sitting in the driver's seat of the Dodge Charger. The air felt heavy. The playful arrogance in his stance had now stiffened with unease. He took half a step back. His friends behind him exchanged nervous looks, none of them daring to speak. Maya, on the other hand, took her time. She adjusted her backpack strap, exhaling slowly, as if she hadn't just turned everything upside down with the school's self-proclaimed king. Vin Diesel didn't say anything at first. He just sat there with one hand on the steering wheel, his gaze fixed on Bryce. It was a look that carried weight, the kind of presence that didn't need words to send a message. Bryce swallowed hard. "Wait a second," he muttered under his breath, almost like he was trying to convince himself this wasn't real. His voice, usually so cocky, had a sudden edge of doubt. He looked at Maya again, this time really looking, like he was trying to figure out something that should have been obvious all along. Maya leaned in slightly, just enough for Bryce to hear her, but she kept her voice steady and low. "Still think I'm just some random girl?" she asked. Bryce's Adam's apple moved as he swallowed again. His mouth opened and closed like he wanted to say something but had lost all ability to form words. Then Vin spoke. "Get in, kid," he said. His voice was calm but firm. It wasn't a question. Maya didn't hesitate. She walked past Bryce, past the stunned silence of the crowd that had started to form, and pulled open the passenger door. The moment she slid inside, Vin shifted the car into gear. The Charger let out a deep growl as it pulled away from the curb, leaving behind a hallway full of whispers and wide eyes. For a moment, neither of them spoke. Houston blurred past the windows. The late afternoon sun cast long streaks of orange and gold across the dashboard. Maya let her fingers drum lightly on her knee, finally letting go of the stress that had been building up since she first walked onto that campus. Vin kept his eyes on the road, his fingers tapping the steering wheel in rhythm. "You okay?" he asked. Maya gave a short nod. Then after a pause, she let out a small laugh. "That was kind of dramatic, wasn't it?" Vin smirked, his signature half-smile appearing on his face. She shook her head, letting her gaze drift out the window. "I didn't mean for them to find out like that." Vin glanced at her, and what would have been a better way? Letting some jerk like that walk all over you? Maya sighed, resting her head back against the seat. "I wasn't going to let him walk all over me. I was just waiting." Vin raised an eyebrow. "Waiting for what?" She shrugged. "The right moment." Vin was quiet for a moment before he let out a soft laugh. "You sound like me when I was your age." Maya turned to him, the corner of her lips twitching into a smirk. "That's a scary thought." Vin let out a full laugh this time, shaking his head. "Smart ass." They drove in comfortable silence for a while, the stress from before melting away as the familiarity of their banter settled in. But Maya knew that just because the moment had passed didn't mean the problem had gone away. Bryce Carter wasn't the type to let things go. And even if he was, fear had a funny way of turning into anger when they pulled into the driveway of their home, a sleek, modern house tucked away in a quiet Houston suburb. Maya unbuckled her seatbelt, but didn't move to get out right away. Vin noticed. "Something else on your mind?" Maya hesitated, then exhaled. "He's not done with me." Vin studied her for a long moment. "No," he said finally, his voice steady. "But I'm not done with him either." She met his eyes. "You think I should fight back?" Vin leaned back in his seat, resting his arm on the steering wheel. "I think you need to be ready, because guys like him, they don't like to lose." Maya pressed her lips together, thinking. Then finally she nodded. "Yeah, I know." The next morning at school, Maya expected whispers. What she didn't expect was how many people were whispering. She walked through the hall, always feeling the weight of 100 eyes moving toward her. The murmurs spread through groups of students like wildfire. Some were curious, some were amused, and some, like Bryce's friends, were just plain angry. She spotted them near the lockers, a tight group of athletes and tough guy wannabes, all of them throwing dirty looks her way. Bryce was in the middle, leaning against the metal with his arms crossed. When he saw her, he didn't smirk. He just stared. Maya didn't flinch. She held his eyes for half a second longer than she needed to before turning around and walking to her class. She could hear them whispering behind her, but she didn't care. If Bryce wanted to play the long game, she could play it too. By lunchtime, things had gotten worse. As she carried her tray toward an empty table, one of Bryce's goons, Ryan, a stocky linebacker with bigger muscles than a brain, deliberately stuck his foot out. Maya felt herself stumble, but she caught herself before she fell all the way. Her tray rattled a little. Some students turned to look, their eyes jumping between her and the group of jocks who were now laughing like it was the funniest thing ever. Maya straightened up, fixing her tray. She didn't react, which seemed to make them more upset. "So no comeback, princess?" Ryan grinned. Maya exhaled sharply, barely holding back her smile. "I just didn't realize cavemen still existed." The students around them let out a collective ooh, and Ryan's smile faded. Bryce, who had been watching the whole thing, tilted his head like he was trying to figure out his next move. Maya didn't wait for them to think of one. She walked past them, sat down at her table, and started eating like nothing had happened. But she knew better. Bryce wasn't going to let this go. By the time the last bell rang, she was already ready for something to happen. So when she found her locker completely destroyed, her books dumped on the floor, marker all over the metal, she wasn't surprised. She sighed, leaning against the next locker. A few students stood nearby, watching. None of them brave enough to step in, but all of them interested enough to see what she would do. Maya bent down, picking up her books one by one, stacking them neatly. Her hands didn't shake. Her face didn't change. She could feel Bryce watching from across the hallway, waiting. So she gave him nothing. She stood up, closed her locker, and walked away without saying a word. That more than anything else seemed to upset him. That night at home, Maya sat at the kitchen table, tapping her fingers on the wood, while Vin Diesel leaned against the counter with his arms crossed, watching her closely. "They trashed my locker today," she said finally. Vin raised an eyebrow. "That's their best move?" Maya smirked. "For now." Vin nodded slowly. "So what's yours?" Maya was quiet for a moment, then finally she smiled. "I'm going to let him dig his own grave." Vin grinned. "Now that's my girl." Maya leaned back in her chair, feeling the familiar rush of control settling into her bones. Because Bryce Carter thought he was the one running the game. But Maya was just getting started. Maya knew exactly what she was doing. She had seen guys like Bryce before. Big talkers, full of themselves, always needing an audience to make their cruelty feel real. They thrived on the reactions they got, on the fear they spread, on the power they thought they held. But the truth was, guys like Bryce weren't as untouchable as they wanted everyone to think. They made mistakes. And Maya, she was patient. She would let him keep digging his own grave until there was no way out. The next morning she walked into Clearview like nothing had happened. The whispers were still there, but they were different now. Yesterday people had been whispering about the girl who had Vin Diesel pick her up in a muscle car. Today they were whispering about what Bryce had done to her locker. The school was split. Some thought it was funny. Others thought Bryce was just embarrassing himself. And Maya could feel it shifting. The moment people started questioning the king's power, his kingdom got weaker. Bryce was leaning against the lockers as usual, surrounded by his group of jocks. They were laughing about something, probably another one of their mean jokes, but when Maya walked by, the talk stopped. Bryce's eyes flicked toward her, waiting for some kind of reaction, some sign that she was still bothered by what he'd done yesterday. But she didn't give him that. She walked right past him without even pausing. That alone made his expression get tighter. By lunchtime, she could feel the pressure building. Bryce wasn't used to being ignored. He loved control, and Maya wasn't playing by his rules. He needed to do something bigger, something public. So she wasn't shocked when she walked into the cafeteria and saw him sitting at his usual table with a smirk on his face as he called out loud, "Hey, Maya, you still crying about your little locker?" The cafeteria got quieter. Students glanced between them. Maya didn't even flinch as she grabbed her tray and walked past him to her usual seat. But Bryce wasn't finished. "Guess you can't handle it, huh? Maybe your big bad dad should come fight your battles for you." That got more attention. Some laughs, some uncomfortable looks. Maya finally looked at him. Her voice stayed calm. "It's funny," she said. "You keep bringing up my dad like you didn't almost piss yourself when you saw him." The cafeteria went completely silent. Bryce's face turned dark. His friends shifted awkwardly, not sure if they should laugh or just pretend they didn't hear it. Maya took a slow bite of her food, her eyes never leaving Bryce's. She wanted him to sit with that feeling, with that shame, with that vulnerability, because guys like him didn't know how to be made into the joke. Bryce clenched his jaw, forcing out a laugh even though it sounded tight and forced. "You think you're tough, huh?" he said, "walking around like you own the place just because you got some rich, famous dad to pick you up in a fancy car." His voice was loud enough for everyone to hear. "What, you think you're better than us?" Maya tilted her head slightly. "No," she said simply. "I just don't need to prove anything." And that was the difference. Bryce spent his whole life proving he was the toughest, the strongest, the most untouchable. Maya didn't need to prove anything because she knew who she was, and that more than anything made him really angry. That's when she saw it. The moment Bryce made his decision. The way his muscles tensed. The way his hand curled into a fist before he quickly forced it to relax. He wasn't done. He was going to try something worse. And Maya was ready. After school, she kept her pace slow as she walked toward the parking lot. She knew Bryce would be waiting. And sure enough, there he was, leaning against his car with his arms crossed, his face hard to read. His friends weren't with him this time. This was just between them now. Maya stopped a few feet away, raising an eyebrow. "Let me guess. Another brilliant speech about how I don't belong here?" Bryce exhaled sharply through his nose. "Nah," he said. "I just want to know one thing." Maya folded her arms. "And what's that?" Bryce studied her for a long moment, then said, "Why don't you fight back?" His voice wasn't mocking this time. It wasn't cocky or mean. It was something else. Real curiosity. Maya thought about the question for a second, then shrugged. "Because I don't need to," Bryce scoffed, shaking his head. "That's not how it works, Williams. People like me, we push. And people like you either push back or get run over." Maya took a step closer, lowering her voice. "Or maybe people like me wait. We let people like you keep pushing, keep making mistakes, keep showing everyone how weak you really are. And then when you're standing in the middle of the mess you made, we don't have to do anything. You've already destroyed yourself." Bryce stared at her, and for the first time Maya saw something flicker in his face. Doubt. But he covered it up quick. "You think you got me figured out?" he said, forcing a smirk. "You don't know a damn thing about me, Maya." Maya studied him. "Maybe not, but I know you're scared." Bryce's whole body went rigid. "I'm not scared of you, Maya." Maya smiled, but there was no warmth in it. "Not of me," she said. "Of being forgotten, of losing, of waking up one day and realizing that nobody cares about you unless you're making someone else feel small. That's what really scares you, Bryce." He clenched his jaw, his nostrils flaring slightly. Maya could see the battle happening inside his head, the urge to lash out, to take back control. But there was nothing he could say, nothing he could do, because deep down he knew she was right. Maya shook her head. "I don't need to fight you, Bryce. You're already fighting yourself." She turned and walked away. And for the first time since she'd met him, Bryce didn't have a comeback. That night, Maya sat at the kitchen table, stirring the ice in her drink as Vin Diesel leaned against the counter, watching her closely. "Something happened today," she said finally. Vin raised an eyebrow. With Bryce? Maya nodded. I think I got inside his head. Vin smirked. Good, Maya exhaled. But that doesn't mean he's done. Vin studied her for a moment, then walked over and sat down across from her. Do you want him to be done? Maya frowned. What do you mean? Vin leaned forward a bit. You could end this right now. Call him out. Embarrass him in front of the whole school. You got more power than you think, kid. Maya was quiet for a long moment. Then finally she shook her head. No, she said. I want him to end it himself. Vin grinned. Smart. Maya leaned back, stretching her arms up over her head. Yeah, but it's going to take patience. Vin chuckled. Good thing you got plenty of that. Maya smirked. Yeah, I do. And she knew it was only a matter of time before Bryce Carter destroyed himself. Maya knew the game was coming to an end. Bryce had pushed and pushed and pushed, waiting for her to break. But instead he was the one falling apart. She saw it in the way his eyes darted around when she walked into her room. The way he seemed tenser every time someone said her name. The way his friends no longer laughed as easily at his jokes. He had always been the one in control, the one with all the power. But now he was grasping at straws, desperately trying to hold on to something that was already slipping through his fingers. The final nail came 2 days later. The school was buzzing about it before Maya even arrived that morning. She walked through the front doors and immediately caught the quiet voices. The stifled laughter. The way people huddled together, whispering and glancing toward the lockers. Something had happened, and she had a feeling she already knew what. She made her way toward the crowd that had gathered near Bryce's locker. Students were staring. Some were taking pictures with their phones. Others were muttering in disbelief. And there, plastered all over the metal door, was a collection of printed screenshots, messages, comments, direct conversations. Every single cruel, disgusting, degrading thing Bryce had ever said about people behind their backs. Some were about students at the school, people he'd pretended to be friends with only to turn around and mock them in private. Others were worse. Comments about teachers, racist and sexist remarks, things that couldn't be laughed off as jokes. But the worst part, the timestamps on those messages showed they weren't from years ago. They were recent. Bryce shoved his way through the crowd. His face was pale. His eyes went wide when he saw what had been posted. What the hell is this? His voice was sharp. His hands shook slightly as he ripped the papers off the locker. But it was too late. The damage was done. Maya didn't need to say a word. She simply leaned against the opposite locker, arms crossed, watching as his reputation crumbled before his eyes. Watching as the same people who used to laugh at his jokes now looked at him with disgust. Watching as his friends slowly stepped away, not wanting to go down with him. Bryce turned. His eyes locked onto hers. There was no cocky smirk this time. No arrogance. No fake toughness. Just pure, unfiltered rage. You did this, he hissed. His voice was low, shaking with barely held anger. Maya tilted her head slightly. Did I? She asked. His nostrils flared. You think you're so smart, huh? You think this makes you better than me? Maya took a slow step forward. Her voice was calm but strong. No, Bryce. I think this makes you exactly who you are. The only difference is now everyone else sees it too. His fists clenched at his sides. His whole body vibrated with anger. For a second she thought he might actually lose it. Might actually try to swing at her right there in the middle of the hallway. But he didn't. He couldn't. Because if he did, it would only prove her right. Instead, he turned on his heel and stormed off, pushing past students as he went. But Maya knew that no matter how far he ran, he couldn't escape this. His kingdom had fallen, and there was no rebuilding it. That afternoon, as she walked out of school, she found Vin Diesel leaning against his Charger, waiting. He wore his usual calm expression, but there was something else in his eyes. Something proud. She slid into the passenger seat, exhaling slowly. Vin didn't start the engine right away. He just looked at her. It's done, huh? Maya nodded. It's done. Vin studied her for a moment, then smirked. You didn't even have to throw a punch. Maya smiled, resting her head back against the seat. Didn't need to. He chuckled, finally turning the key in the ignition. The Charger rumbled to life as they pulled away from the school. So what now? Maya thought about it. She thought about the past few weeks. About everything that had led to this moment. She thought about how much had changed, not just with Bryce, but with herself too. She turned to Vin, a small grin playing at her lips. Now I finally get to enjoy high school. Vin laughed, shaking his head. That's my girl. And as they sped down the road, The weight that had been pressing on Maya's chest for so long finally lifted. She had won. Not by being louder or stronger or more ruthless, but by being smarter, by being patient, by letting the truth do all the work. And as for Bryce Carter, he was just another lesson. A reminder that power built on fear never lasts, and that sometimes the quiet ones are the ones you should really fear the most.